Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining the next episode of the Immergence show. I'm Nico Farah, your host. I'm a creative technologist that brings in AI, spatial computing, and gaming into retail. And I have been hosting this show for over 2 years on X and now in LinkedIn. We are live every Tuesday, and we appreciate you being here with us. Today, we're talking about some very important topics. We have been talking about so much in how tech is powerful, how it can be applied to various industries like fashion, but we haven't really, focused so much on the impact in the local level. So our guest today, Warren, is an amazing expert in the fashion industry who has applied his knowledge and insights into his local community. So this is a very unique topic, and I hope you guys tune in until the end. And if you have any questions, comments, feel free to share it in the comment section. We can see it and respond to it. We would love to also get to know you. If you want to share what exciting stuff you're working on, if you want to be on the show, feel free to let me know as well. And we're going to get started with Warren introducing himself. Thank you for
Hey,
being here,
Nico.
Warren.
You're very welcome. It's great to be here. It's been a while since I've plugged in my microphone, but yeah, delighted to be here. Looking forward to the conversation. I think it'll be a good one, hopefully. All good.
Awesome. Yes. Please share a little bit more about yourself, your background in the fashion industry, how you got to the fashion tech side of things.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Okay, so my name is Warren Pocker Mills. I'm based in the UK, in the southwest of the UK. I've been in the industry now for about 35 years. Started off at retail, worked with some lovely brands actually in retail. So I worked with brands like Giorgio Armani, Hugo Boss, Versace, those types of brands in Birmingham, which is my hometown. And then decided to get into sales and started to work in wholesale actually in the fashion industry, which was great. I had a great career and worked with pretty much every retailer in the UK, from Selfridges, Harvey Nichols to TK Maxx, as we know, TJ Maxx if you're in the States, and everyone in between really. It's been a really good career. About 15 years ago, I set a consultancy business up, and that was really me kind of looking at small to medium businesses and going in there and kind of helping them get to the next level of development and growth. And that was great. And then unfortunately, COVID came, and that really changed everything. I built a business on going into bricks and mortar stores. And then all of a sudden we couldn't go anywhere, unfortunately. And a couple of months passed and I thought, okay, it's fine. It will be over. I'll be able to get back into the world. And obviously that didn't, which made me, I suppose, look at myself, look at my career, look at the way that I could kind of pivot and look at new ways of doing old things. So I started a podcast, which was really interesting, actually. And anyone that wants to start a podcast, please get in touch, because I made so many mistakes. And actually, it was a real learning curve for me. I started it on Anchor, and it was very hit and miss. But that was great. I met some amazing people, and that show itself is in 95 different countries. I set up an e-commerce business, which I've been working on since, called Before Stores. And then really what happened, I started looking at other ways of influencing my industry. So I looked very much towards sustainability and the circular economy, and how the fashion industry, as it's the second most polluting industry in the world, is having an effect on the planet, and also on my own responsibilities and my own custodianship of building a career in that industry. And then I really started looking at Web3. I mean, that was really when it started to happen for me. Talking to lots of people about DeFi and blockchain and NFTs, these things called NFTs, and DAOs and all those types of things. And it was all, I'm 56, Nico. So, I've kind of come from a very experienced understanding of the real world and what happens commercially with brands, and what makes consumers engage with brands and what they really want when they get to store and online. And for me, I was kind of mixing with this and made the jargon. But I could also help these guys and girls as well, because although they built amazing products, what they didn't have was an understanding of how you deploy those into the marketplace. And that's really what I've built my career on through a sales and marketing perspective. And yeah, it's been a real game changer. I'll be honest with you, since that time, I haven't picked up a garment and dragged a garment rail around, which I'd done for many, many years. I'm talking to brands about taking their products and their messaging and the storytelling and bringing them into Web 2.5, which I think is an important place for me to be. And just breaking down some of the mystique around Web3. And we can talk about that a little later on, because it is a confusing space, not only for people who have an understanding, because everything is happening so quickly, but especially for brands and retailers, because they know it's coming, they want to be part of it, but they're not releasing any budget in any great volumes yet, unless you're a luxury brand and you have those capabilities. But yeah, it's been a really interesting few years. I've been fortunate to work with people like Microsoft and done some talks for them around the future of retail, and some big grocery companies here in the UK, talking to them, to their supply chain, about browseware and Clo 3D and digital fashion and the way that things are moving. So it's been good, and long may it continue.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to thank our amazing audience for a moment. Ian, Gabriel, and anyone else who is tuning in. We appreciate you. Thank you for commenting and contributing. Ian mentioned all we have is what we leave behind. How do we manage our footprint while here? Absolutely. That's very aligned to what we're saying. And let's just demystify, simplify, and associate common understanding. Totally.
Yeah. 100%.
Thank you for that. I would love to hear from you, Warren, with all these years of experience and collaborations that you had. Can you go deeper into what challenges you saw within the fashion industry, and how you saw these technologies can potentially solve for it? Because I think that more than many of our guests, you have really been deep into traditional fashion industry.
Yeah, I think you've raised a good point there about traditional fashion, because we had the Met Gala yesterday, and we spoke very briefly before this call. And a lot of people look at this industry, which, just to put it into perspective, is around 2.6, could be worse, $1 billion, right? It's a huge industry. And a lot of people approach me saying, can you get to this person? Can you get to that person? And it's vast, it's huge. And my positioning within industry has been very much in retail, because that's my background, and also wholesale, and that's working with volumes. And the problem with volumes is, when you are working in those types of environments and you're kind of part of the machine, you just kind of, I'm not saying you turn a blind eye, but you're just in it, and it's just part of the industry. You have your collection, you go take it to market, you get as much business as you can, you get as many orders as you can, as much volume as you can, deliver that into store. Hopefully you can push that through with some good storytelling, and then you get more business next season. And when you start shining a light at the industry, you start looking at things in a different way. And for me, even with Before Stores, one of the early things that I wanted to try and do with that platform was redefine the way that consumers purchase products, how they engage with brands, but more importantly, how we can stop producing inventory and then having to sell it, and in essence, pre-sell it on the back of a pre-order. And that was always quite challenging, because as consumers, when we buy something, we want it. And then when I started looking at NFTs and digital collectibles in particular, I thought, hold on a minute. If we produced a digital collectible, they would have something tangible. They would have something for their money. And then we could go through and we could produce the phygital item, physical product. And that kind of circles the loop there. So that kind of stuck into my mind a couple of years ago. And that has obviously evolved, and many people have gone down that route. I think part of the problem that a lot of people in this space, I'm not going to mention any names, but there's some great players. What they lack, unfortunately, is the down to earth warehouse grime, hustle. They lack that element of really knowing what the industry is all about. It's a ruthless industry, and it's built on relationships, and it's built on trust, and it's also built on long-term objectives of people working together. And actually, part of the business that I work with at the moment, the clients that I've got, those relationships have taken a long time to foster. And there is trust there because I've dealt with some of them in the real world as well as in the digital world. And then when you start introducing to those clients new things, I'm going to use the example of digital product passports as one thing. So anybody that doesn't know, digital product passports, there's legislation coming out in Europe over the next few years, and it's three categories. So it's electronics, there is also batteries, and there's also fashion. So huge volumes of product there. And a digital product passport will allow the consumer and manufacturer to show provenance. It will allow them to show transparency and allow considered decisions to be made. And also flipping that back onto the manufacturer, considered decisions being made at manufacture. So they have to be very careful how they operate and make sure their supply chain is on point. This is one thing that as we start moving over the next couple of years, more brands, more fashion brands, I mean, even Artifact and Nike, when they brought out their augmented hoodie, you know, there was a chip based into that product which showed provenance and showed authentication. That will go to the next stage now and literally show every touch point, how many gallons of water was used in that pair of jeans, right the way through to end of life and what happens to product at the end. So very, very quickly, we're seeing how technology is coming into the fashion industry, how fashion is adopting that. Both in manufacturing and supply, and then in the deployment of messaging with the end consumer through magic mirrors and augmented reality and all the other whistles and bells that are on the market at the moment. So it's a really interesting time. And just to add to that, what I'm really enjoying at the moment is this merger of not just fashion and technology, but also music and culture and street art and food, and everything creative is all kind of coming into this melting pot at the moment. And that's a wonderful thing. And it really fills me with a lot of excitement because those barriers to entry are being lowered. And I think the barriers for creativity are definitely lowered with the thanks to generative art and tools of that nature. So it's a really interesting time moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were just talking about Met Gala in the backstage, and I mentioned like what I love about seeing the clothing is the art.
Yeah.
That, you know, like not all of the, like you can't necessarily wear these garments anywhere else. Like,
Yeah.
so, but you have an opportunity to see art and appreciate art. Same we see with our fashion shows, and but you know it's been also commercialized, and brands are using it in a different direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so there is a lot of interesting aspect into incorporating technology to then facilitate more creativity and accelerate those.
Yeah.
I'd love to touch on that digital product passport that you mentioned. What do you see it can solve for the industry? I don't think they are requiring it to be based on blockchain, right? Using blockchain. So it is basically just an entity or, you know, some apps or tools creating that, who is really regulating to make sure they're honest with communicating, especially a lot of luxury fashion might not be necessarily wanting us to know where they're sourcing and what it goes to the process. So yeah, just curious if you want to share anything on
Yeah.
that.
I think there will be two touch points there. I think there will be brands that will be utilizing technology to kind of sell the message and not actually following through with anything. There will definitely be brands that are putting it on chain without a shadow of a doubt. I know a couple of people that are in negotiations with some blockchain companies to try and make that happen.
Yes.
But I really do believe that the pressure and the moral compass will be governed by the consumer. I think over time, as this technology becomes more apparent and people realize the benefit of the blockchain and what can be done, I think the consumer is going to be much more savvy and much more much less to be driven by brand marketing and to be more driven by their own sense of education and going out there and finding out about brands. It was interesting because I was listening to Sam Altman speak a couple of days ago, and he was basically talking quite a lot about, you know, this choice, this allowing consumers and content creators to make those choices. And I think that's something that's going to be really prevalent moving forward. You know, this next iteration of the internet, however you want to describe it or call it, is literally resetting everything for everybody. And I think a lot of big brands are worried. I think a lot of big players are thinking, actually, we're not as secure now. We don't have that moat around our business. And I think that allows so many more people to come through and to shine. And I think we're going to see some big disruption, like we did with, you know, Amazon back in the day, and Airbnb with the taxi service, and Uber with the taxi service. And, you know, I think those companies are going to be worried about what's coming forward, because you know, there was a case a few years ago where we would have these YouTubers kind of doing things, and people create content creators from their bedroom, and now they've got the source and the mechanics and the impetus to become massive. And actually that's very, very valuable for everybody and the industries they're connected with as well. So it's exciting times, really is.
Yes, that is basically democratization that we all are very excited in Web3, and hopefully in the future we'll see more of that. Actually, I would love to get to talk more about like the tangible stuff that like what you have done in the local communities, and like problems you saw, solutions you put together. And to continue that, like next week, we actually have a guest that will talk about the technologies that will be more democratizing. So tell us more in terms of like what you noticed in your local community, brands, you know, around you that you felt like you have to do something about it.
Yeah. So I'll be honest with you, Nico. The last couple of months have been quite interesting for me. You know, I've spent most of my career in a plane or at a departure airport, or kind of running all over the UK or wherever in a car, and spending a lot of time on the road, kind of hustling. And, you know, I live in the southwest of the UK. I live in a very nice seaside town called Weston-super-Mare, which is in the shadow really of a big city called Bristol. And also another one called Bath, or Bath, if you're from Bath. You know, they are known for technology. They've got great hubs. They've got great infrastructure. There is a lot of money going in there from a technical perspective on support and grants and funding and everything else. And in Weston-super-Mare, what we have a number of different things. We have a community which is filled with optimism. We have a town which is well attended. We have, I think, about 6 million visitors a year here. In 2015, it was funny, I noticed Ian's comment there about Banksy. But Banksy did an exhibition here in 2015 called Dismaland, which was huge for the town. It brought £20 million worth of business to the town.
Wow.
And unfortunately, we've kind of lost a little bit of the legacy of that. And I said to my partner, I said, wouldn't it be amazing if, as opposed to me talking to her about conversations we have on LinkedIn about, you know, Metaverse Fashion Week and all that, you know, Decentraland and Roblox and Walmart and all these wonderful, massive, big projects, wouldn't it be great if we could do something which was more localized, more tangible? And the reason why I wanted to try and run that over my own mind was to validate what I talk about every day, and validate it in a way where I can get feedback instantly from the people that are making the decisions that will potentially be the audience in 5, 4, 3, 2 years time. You know, and I think that's really, really important, because if I use the analogy of the fashion industry again, what would happen is we would sell to our retailers, but we wouldn't really know if that product was successful until the consumer bought it. And what we're doing at the moment in the Web3 space, thanks to channels like LinkedIn, is we're all talking in this vacuum about, oh my gosh, look at this, look at that, look at this, look at that, look at that, look at this. And it's great. And we are driving technology and we're driving encouragement and it's first to market and everything else. What we're not actually doing is deploying that to the common person in the high street, on the streets, in the local authorities, in the council. So what I decided to do was, using some great little tech, I decided to augment a few augmented reality pieces around my town, in iconic places around the town. And just to put that into perspective, so my little seaside town, not only did we have Banksy, we also had the Beatles play here. And we got this amazing picture of a rock by the sea with the Beatles sat on it. So I augmented that. I've used generative AI to make people come alive, local historians, and talk about the blue plaques which commemorate local historic parts of the town. I've done all sorts of amazing things, and actually I've started dropping them out to the local community, and also set up a Facebook page, and people have been going on that and saying, oh my God, what are you doing? What are you doing? Very, very quickly, Nico, I started getting some conversations going with my local authority. So we have a town council. We also have a district council. And people from there kept contacting me and saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And I had a few meetings, and very quickly I realized that the town needed this level of communication, and it wasn't anything derogatory to what they're doing at the moment, but actually what they want to try and do is set themselves aside, and actually to walk through the town and to say, all you need is a mobile phone, and actually we can make the town come good. We can make things happen. We can tell stories. We can make old Victorian facades come alive with what it used to look like 150 years ago. And this is really powerful because, again, it's about storytelling. It's about envisaging a new way of doing things. And then you start connecting the dots. And one thing that is really, really important with probably everybody listening to this show is they probably live in a location where it's a challenge for all local authorities to move people around the town. So most people come to us and they come to the seaside, and they walk along the promenade, they have a lovely time, then they get back in their car and they go home. However, the retailers, and this is where it's hit home with me, the retailers in those second and third locations, they are struggling to get footfall. And when they struggle to get footfall, they struggle to take money. And when they struggle to take money, we all know what happens. There are empty units. So for me to be able to offer some kind of mechanism, i.e. a festival, where we can start dragging people around town. We can direct them in any way that we want. We can tell them any story that we want. We can engage retailers. We can then educate not only the consumer on the street, but we can engage retailers as well on how to use technology in a slightly different way. And a lot of retailers at that level, they don't have big SEO departments, they might have a Facebook page, and actually to give them a QR code, which means that we can get the data back. So we can hold information there, and we can say, look, do we know who went to this particular blue plaque last Thursday between the hours of 2 and 3 in the afternoon? At the moment, my town council can't really do that, but actually with this technology, we can do that for them. So it's weird because it's done from a place of trying to support the community, but I'm seeing business opportunities coming towards me now, and that again is great because I don't have to travel to London. I can literally walk 5 minutes into town and do the business I need to do there. And then just to finish that as well, because something else which is really important, we have 2 colleges, 2 universities actually in the town. One of them, ironically, is a gaming and animation course. So they have talent coming out of the town that unfortunately will go to Bristol or go to London or go elsewhere into the country. We want to retain that talent. We also have a fashion degree going on as well. And again, a couple of weeks ago, I did a talk there and talked a lot about my industry and a lot about sustainability and what's happening at the moment. And we talked about immersive technologies and talked about Unity and 3D rendering and all those types of things. And actually the students were like, wow, so again, we want to retain the local talent. We want to try and use this town, my little sleepy seaside town, as a real hub for extended reality and immersive experiences. And why not? Why can we not host a UK XR awards here next year. I mean, we shall, we will, hopefully.
Wow. Wow. This is very inspiring. I appreciate you sharing that. And this physical retail has been suffering a lot during the
Hmm.
pandemic, even after. Even big cities in the US, in San Francisco, New York, we see a lot of store closing
Hmm.
still happening.
Yeah.
I think people's habits have changed, and a lot of things have changed. The society has changed. So there's a lot to be considered, and I love that you are sharing that with us. Before we go deeper into that, I want to appreciate
Hmm.
our amazing audience,
Yeah.
communicating, engaging. Ian, you're amazing. You always full of energy and love. And thank you, Nina, Ambriel. I don't know if you want to respond to that, Warren.
She's basically talking about authenticity in stories. However, do you believe the digital passport will transform fashion industry's labor market and help reduce the percentage of modern slavery attributed to it? You know what? That's a really good question. I think it will help. And again, I started this conversation out trying not to be a whistleblower. That's what I'm here to do. My industry has inherent issues with exploitation. Um, and it's really strange because until you really understand the really dark side of the industry, Rana Plaza being the prime example, with thousands of people losing their lives in India. You see these things, you experience these things, but again, I'm not condoning that in any way. However, there is another side to the story as well. And I don't want to dramatize this, but if you are living in that environment and you go to work and you do your shift and you come back and then your sister takes over from your shift and then you come back and then your auntie goes in and takes that shift and then you come back and your grandmother goes over and take that shift, because as a family, you need to work, because if you don't work, you don't eat. That also puts it into a different mindset, and there are great companies out there. There are great factories. And of course, we want quality of life for everybody. We want safe working conditions. We want people to be paid correctly. And actually, that's where I think some things like B Corp will be very, very important moving forward. And that just doesn't relate to fashion. That's an organization which looks at advocacy across the entire business, not only from employers internally, but even through to, what your carbon emissions are looking like from the servers that you have in your office. So, and the great thing about B Corp is every 2 years it gets reviewed. So people are looking to improve all the time. And it's a difficult subject. And I'm privy to have seen both sides to some extent. But without a doubt, I definitely feel that technology is the only way we can do it at the moment, because brands are not quick enough. The governments are not quick enough. Consumers are still buying in the volumes that they're buying. And again, to put that into perspective, Shein are sending around 700 to 800 packages to the US every 7 to 800,000 packages every day to the US. 22% of the carbon emissions of an adolescent French child can be equated just to Shein as one supplier. So there are atrocities that are happening, and this is not just about cracking down on Shein, but there are problems. There are huge problems, and as an industry, we need to take stock of that, and we need to be looking at, as I say, looking at technology, and we need to be acting as custodians of this new tech and try to put the things in place that allows us not to make the mistakes we've made over the last 3 or 4 decades.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Ambriel, for this great question. Digital fashion could be a great solution to all of this. I was watching a quick video on Instagram. Someone was looking into the data of who is really buying fast fashion. We often think, oh, it's Gen Z. They can't afford it. But it's actually a lot of millennials and maybe Gen X that they just want to try new things and, post a picture. But come on, you can do that with digital fashion. So it's a lot of education that is required.
It really is.
Thank you for the great question. And
it was a great question. And just to add on that as well, we talk about consumerism and we talk about over consumerism and everything else, but there is a huge responsibility on the brands and the manufacturers as well. And to put that into context, 22 billion items of clothing and apparel are made and they're never even sold. So put that into context, this is huge,
Mhm.
huge problems. So, and that is not going to happen overnight. But yeah, it is a great question. And maybe we'll do another podcast on it, or we'll do another show and
Another.
we can talk about that. No problem at all.
Yeah, let's go back to the localization. Ian also mentions like in the States, there are a lot of opportunities. So I would love to hear from you, Warren, in terms of like the amazing work and activations that you did. Um,
Hmm.
First of all, like what type of tech did you use? How quickly you could put this together? Did you put together a team? Did you do it yourself? And tell
Yeah.
us also in terms of like the response you got. Did you see more younger generation being excited about it?
Hmm.
Was it, more like older? And like, how did you even initiate the conversation with the government? Did you already have relationships? How do you recommend people going about it?
Yeah. I think everybody's different, and one thing that I can, when I mean everybody's different, everybody's local authority. It's not a governmental thing yet, unfortunately. It would be amazing if it was, but so it's very localized. I think the key for everybody listening here, and one of the things we can talk about towards the end of the show is how everybody needs to open their doors and open their minds and not automatically think about creating things that are going to change the world, because we all have this secret sauce at the moment that not a lot of people know about. And what we need to do, we need to take it into our own environments and make it relevant. If you can make something relevant, you've got half a chance of getting conversion. And actually, that not only comes with the decision makers, but you have to dilute the language so much to some extent and dilute the technology so much that people get it and they make it easy. And I think part of the problem is the fact that, there's so much happening at the moment and we all want those new shiny things. But actually, there's tech on the market which is accessible to everybody in this room. And it's those types of things I use. So and again, shout out to the team at Over the Reality, but I used Over the Reality. If you don't know them, check them out. There's Diego, there's Michelle, there's a whole heap of them. And I started looking at that product a couple of years ago and thinking, this looks quite interesting, and it's tokenized. So they've got their own token, and this is not a shield for them. And one of the challenge that we had was the fact that they didn't have accessibility to be able to deploy. When you buy this land, this hexagonal land, didn't have the opportunity to deploy augmented reality on there very easily. They had to download the app. You had to download the app, which I thought, okay, well, that's fine. What it does do is allow people from all over the world to go to my lands, which again has its own route to market and distribution, which is really encouraging. They've now subsequently downloaded a QR code. So now you can go in and you can look at the QR code and you go straight to it. I wanted, however, something that I could use that would allow me to offer it as a service to people, which meant that ideally I wanted to white label it. I wanted to rebrand it so brands can be part, so they own it, and I can orchestrate it and bring it together. And I've got a host of 3D renderers and Unity players and Blender people that I can kind of call in to help me with the aesthetics and building the assets. I'm not a designer. I haven't got the time, unfortunately. I wish I had, to develop that skill set, but I think it's important to have an understanding of what is needed. And then I looked at certain things like Eighth Wall, which anybody that's into AR will know. Eighth Wall, it's owned by Niantic. It's a huge machine. But that was inhibitive. It was too expensive. I've got to do it properly, and I've got to go down the commercial route. So now I've talked to a few people, and I think the key for me, Nico, just to answer your question there, is there's so many products on the market. For me, it's a question of whoever I engage with, I'm not just selling me and the services that I can potentially put into them. I have to be 1000% confident that product not only works, but is there also for the long term. Because I can't, going back to the fashion industry, one bad move, your reputation is spoiled. And actually, that's not what I can do. So I have to be really, really clear on what I can get out of the product, what are its limitations, what I cannot overpromise to people, and manage expectations. And actually, I've had some amazing conversations with CEOs of some of the best augmented reality products. I've been speaking to some amazing augmented artists that I want to get into this festival, and I want to showcase people from all over the world. But building those relationships is really important. And I'm not under pressure. I don't have VCs screaming at me saying, where's the return? Where's the return? Where's the return? I do it correctly. I do it at my pace. And I do it hopefully with some sincerity and some empathy to the creators, but also my clients, because whenever I work with somebody, I want to work with them for the long term. And I need to build a product that will scale, that will take me not only from my hometown, that could take me to anywhere in the world. And actually, that's how I'm kind of putting an architecture over the product and the services I'm offering.
Amazing. And tell us more about the audience response. Kind of like, was it more younger generation, older generation? Like, how was the response even different?
Yeah, do you know what? It's been really interesting because one of the main guys, I'm not going to mention any names, one of the main guys who's a local historian in this town, he's an old guy. I mean, he's so knowledgeable about the history of the town. And as soon as I started talking to him about this one architect called Hans Price, who's built lots of very historical buildings around the town, and I showed him this generative, augmented version of this guy, Hans Price, coming to life and talking about the town and what's happening. And, literally, it was my voice. He was just blown away. And what was lovely was this interplay, and you don't get it all the time, but it's lovely to be speaking to somebody where the light switch just goes on. And actually what they bring to the party is not tech, it's not fashion, it's not retail, it's not consumerism, it's a different need. And actually the best way to sell anything to anybody is to listen to what they have to say. And what I found over the last couple of months is so many new ideas coming to me, things that I'd never even thought about, because although I see things in a retail kind of storytelling way, there are new opportunities and new ideas and new ways of doing things I would never have thought about. And I think that just opens it out. So I was talking to a tattoo artist the other day, and she was doing some work, and she's going to do some, she works in she's got her own studio, but she's also gone into the art side of things, and she's going to do some tattoo art on leather, and frame them up, and they're going to look beautiful. And we started talking about this tech, and she was like, oh my God, one of the biggest challenges we have in the studio is how it's going to look on somebody. And actually to use augmented reality and to use that skills and to put that on somebody instantaneously, or go to a restaurant, and as opposed to looking over and seeing what somebody else is ordering, you hit the barcode on the menu and you have it in front of you. And oh my gosh, the uptake, the data, the analytics, the surprise, the discovery, the imagination, the virality of that business socially, it just starts to roll. And these are things within 10 minutes of where I live. And this is what I'm saying, there's money on the table, guys. So use what you've got, and talk to people locally, because it's been a real eye-opener for me, Nico, and I still want to talk about, and I've still got a couple of projects which are big projects, and there's one around neurodiversity that I want to start really getting my teeth into over the next few months. And these are big kind of legacy projects, and they are wonderful, and they bring me joy in lots of different ways. But honestly, when I'm walking down the street, or I went to one of the local guys here was doing a dinosaur exhibition, right? So you've got all these people walking around in these dinosaur suits, and these kids were coming in, and I got my iPad, and I'd say to them, hey, do you want to see a dinosaur? And they're like, yeah. So I'd show them the iPad, and obviously right in front of them was some pterodactyls flying around, or a triceratops. And then I would always ask the same question. So what's your favorite dinosaur? And I probably 95% said a T-Rex. And I'm like, look up there. And they would look, I'd get the iPad, and there'd be a 60-foot T-Rex over them. And they were just blown away, as was their mother, as was their grandmother and their grandfather. And, that's really important. It's really important that we satisfy more of an understanding of where this technology can be deployed. And I've not even gone down the road of looking at POAPs or monetization or anything else, but there is there's a big understanding of creativity in this town, you know. And again, just a very quick one, but we've got a fantastic group of artists that have an art space in the center of town. They don't have anywhere to go next week, right? Because their unit is being used for something else. And they're struggling to trying to keep the momentum going, you know. And I'm going to talk to those guys, as I have done with lots of others, and say, let me help. We can put your gallery, your exhibition, we can have avatars explaining about all the techniques that you use in the studio right now, but we'll do it remotely, and we'll have it either in VR or in AR, and we can encourage connections with people all over the world. And I think this is what we need to do more of. You know, local should be the new global. You know, that's what we were saying in lockdown, and there's no reason why that shouldn't continue.
Love that. So it seems like you have been onboarding people and exciting people through showing them rather than telling them, right? So there was not so much like onboarding in a traditional, like, sit down, I'm going to explain to you. It was more like you created it and then they already see it.
Yeah. That's, I mean, that for me has been the easiest way to demonstrate something, you know. And when I've had some meetings with the councils, you know, I put together a deck and I talked about expectations and what I wanted to achieve and KPIs and all the things I would normally talk about. But the thing that ignited the real enthusiasm is when they can see local things that need to be told but are not being told in the way they need to be told. And that was really important. And actually somebody once said to me, which is something that kind of resonates. And, you know, I see so many things, as we all do, Nico, certainly on LinkedIn, of, oh my gosh, look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that. And where I've grown up, being the 56-year-old that I am over the last couple of years, is reducing the energy and concentrating, distilling what skills I could deploy and execute, and making sure that there was a 360 approach to that. And someone once said to me, the main thing is to make the main thing the main thing. And actually, with all the other noise that is going on out in the world, you know, just really dig down and just hit hard at what you do well. And that can be anything. That can be just having a really, you know, authentic conversation with somebody, or supporting some local artists that need your support. And I think, you know, I've done my days, I'd like to think, of chasing money and trying to be the best. I don't care anymore. I just want to do good stuff. If I can do good stuff and it makes me happy, the money will come. The money is irrelevant. The money always comes if you do it for the right reasons, in my humble opinion.
Yes, legacy is so important. The impact and everything we're talking about has to actually be materialized. Otherwise, there's no point.
Exactly.
So love that. Thank you. Did you try incorporating VR as well, or have you thought about that? You know, like you mentioned the dinosaur, it reminded me of Apple Vision Pro demo.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
So, I mean, there are integrations with over the reality. They're working on a Quest 3 adaptation, and also a Vision Pro as well. And it's interesting because I noticed a stat yesterday, and I think it was the AR industry. I think it was 15.5 billion this year, going up to 21.44 billion next year, which is huge. I mean, that's like 38% growth. So, and that's just in tourism. And when it comes to friction, we have to think about the audience, right? Most people have a smartphone in their pocket. As technology develops, and I don't think it's going to be long before maybe it's going to be Meta, you know, that's going to come through with a great device. I think, you know, it's one. I see Ope in the audience, and shout out to Ope. If you're not following Ope, please follow Ope. She's an absolute goddess, especially in the fashion and from a technical perspective on metaverse and everything digital. She's amazing. And, you know, when I met Ope, she was taking people into VR worlds in Altspace VR and, you know, VR chat and all those. And it was great because we had the handset. We had the headset. We had the hardware. But I think once the barrier to entry lowers and we've got glasses and it's just so much more accessible, and we can get more power, whether it's through a connectivity of, you know, Bluetooth or however the technology arises, that makes it really, really easy. And that spatial understanding becomes more of our daily life. And we're not consuming product, we are the content, we are in it. I think that's definitely the way it's going to go, and that's really exciting. Some people say it's nerve-wracking and they're worried about that, but it's evolution. We are going into this third industrial revolution, and just like they did in the 1800s, there was doubters and there was people worried and there was people fearful of their jobs. The reality is, as we know, 30% of the jobs we have in 23 have not even been created yet. So it's again, I keep going back to this custodianship. It's people like us that will be creating these opportunities, and we need to nurture and put in place the right things at the right time, because we've got a big responsibility that we need to look at. So I think it will change. It's when we were talking about the McKinsey report and it was 2030, it was $5 trillion. My goodness me, that's a couple of years ago, and it's just, the velocity is insane. And with Nvidia's new chips and everything else that's coming through, it's it's happening quick, isn't it? I mean, I don't have to tell you about it.
Exciting time to be alive and be working with these technologies and be at the forefront. Love that. So can you tell us, like, what do you think about the future of this? So if each of us now starts thinking about how we can implement our knowledge and experience into our local community, do you think this can impact something bigger?
Yeah, I do. I mean, again, I mentioned earlier about, that I've done some keynotes. So, I did one for a big supermarket chain, a big supermarket chain here, and went to their supply chain and spoke very openly about how technology can be used in their business. And I'll be honest with you, there was a lot of resistance there to some extent. Some people had already adopted some of the technologies, but a lot of people are very complacent still, certainly from a business point of view, of making the jump, making the decisions. A bit like me, 25, 30 years ago, when I said no one's going to buy a pair of jeans online. I mean, it's just not going to happen. I mean, who's going to do that? So there is a recycle of the same mindset going forward there. But going back to how we can make a difference, I think it is important to widen your horizon to some extent, and talk to colleges, talk to youth groups, set up meetups. I'm thinking about setting up just a meetup once a month, and I've started doing some generative art, and I've always surrounded myself, Nico, with some amazingly creative people, and I've never really thought myself as a creative, although I like to think I've got a good eye. I've certainly like to think I've got a good eye on what will sell and what won't sell. But over the last couple of years, I've been dabbling in Midjourney and Leonardo and Dali and joining some amazing communities. I'm a part of a team that is working alongside some amazing people. Their platform is called Uncut, and it's a really vibrant energy there of people that are finding new ways to discover their talents and kind of put that out into the world, and everyone's helping everybody else. And I think we can do that, everybody can do that, but it needs to start with an appreciation of how you can dilute it down. And my argument is, if somebody asks you, Nico, I'm going to put a question to you, but someone asks you at a dinner party, what do you do? Where do you start? How do you tell your grandmother what you do? I mean, it's really difficult. So there's one thing about having an elevator pitch, but there's another one of having something, being able to communicate in a way that people go, I get it. And that's, that is the challenge. I mean, how do you, Nico, how do you talk to people when people are talking to you about it?
Well, I love that you said the best way of communication or selling is listening. I think I'm the best listener in that sense. Like I always ask question about the other person. And my favorite question is, what's your passion? Because I don't think I think we all always ask, like, what do you do? Like those are just not necessarily aligning with our passion, but everybody has a hobby project, or if you're lucky, your hobby project is now your main project. But and then depending on what their passion is, I find the commonality, and that builds the relationship. I appreciate you mentioning that community element. I also just moved to LA, started diving into these communities. And
Mm.
there's a huge gaming, environment here. And so I'm setting up a chapter with some other folks for International Game Development Association. So a lot of cool stuff that we can do in the local level that can result in
Yeah.
something bigger. So this is really inspiring that you're touching on all of that. And we have a lot of good engagement from our audience.
Great.
Ian is mentioning consider meetups beyond the
Mm-hmm.
physical. We can all
Mm-hmm.
congregate together. Absolutely. And then Gabriel, content creators are leveraging immersive technologies. Yes, definitely. There's a lot that can be done. I would love to, as we're approaching towards the end of the show,
Mm-hmm.
I would love to hear about your other projects,
Mm-hmm.
kind of also what's next for you,
Yeah.
other than all this cool stuff that you're doing,
Yeah.
and how we can all support you.
Yeah, that's very kind. I mean, I think the LinkedIn community has been fabulous. I know it has its trolls, it has its bad elements. There are lots of people shilling there and everything else. And I think, I see some good names and some good faces, and I hear some good things from some good people. And actually, going forward, those are the people that I'm trying to align myself with. And that comes two-way. I want to support them, and hopefully they can support me. To some extent or in some way. But going back to what I'm working on at the moment. So, this festival I'm going to do this year, I'm still not sure. There's a couple of things that I'm trying to line up the dots with making something a bit bigger. This is something that I'm guilty of. I see something and I think, actually, wouldn't it be amazing if we could do that? I might have to tail that down, but I definitely want to put something out into the world this year, which I can do. There's not a problem. So I'm building a database of amazing creatives and 3D artists and people who are doing wonderful creative things with Web3. So anyone who wants to get involved in that, more than happy to do that. I've got my e-commerce platform called Before Stores, which I've kind of put on hold at the moment. And that's a whole new subject. So I'm looking for some funding for that, actually, because I think that's I need to build a team for that, really. I've got my new podcast, which I've been recording some great episodes, called the Fashion Metaverse Club, which demystifies the industry, helps people go from Web 2 to Web 3, staying firmly in Web 2.5. I've got some amazing recordings already there, so I'm educating and pulling all that together at the moment. And then I have this, I mentioned it earlier, so I have this group of us, and there's 4 founders, and we're all from different sectors, really. One from the licensing, one from the immersive world building, one who's an amazing woman, and she's a mum, and she understands firsthand some of the challenges that we're trying to overcome. And then there's me from this. Don't know what I do, really, but I'm this unemployable marketeer stroke salesperson, stroke creative. And basically what we want to try and do is build a support mechanism for the neurodiverse fraternity, because as we start looking at content creators and gamers and people who are creating and building this next iteration of the internet, there's a huge potential with regards to assisting neurodiverse people. So people with autism, with dyspraxia, with dyslexia, with ADHD. And there's a lot of people in that sector, a lot of people in the creative space that have had challenges. Some of them have done very, very well. Some of them have been used and abused and not done so well. And what we want to try and do is use generative art to give them the power to be able to not only secure work, but build a portfolio, build a CV using comic book as the nucleus, shall we say, of creating their story, and then using their mum and their dad and their dog, and all those will be superheroes in this comic book, and it will be hopefully empower them to do what they need to do and to get work, and for customers and clients and businesses to appreciate that, if you've got somebody that is amazingly competent at their skill set, but they struggle in social anxiety or something like that, it doesn't matter if they work between 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning, because you're going to get brilliant work. So we're looking at a way of building in the talent, and it's going to be called the LOET, which stands for the League of Extraordinary Talents. Wow. LEOT. And you will be able to see that in situ, hopefully over the next 6 months, 6 to 8 months. So busy on that. I'm also got some other side projects as well. And I did mention earlier about this platform called Uncut, which is really close to my heart. I'm not associated with Uncut other than just want to help these guys. It's kind of a cross between Instagram, OpenSea, and Facebook. So all the good things out of all of those things. It's not on chain yet. They have their own tokenomics, in-house tokenomics, but the atmosphere there is just really welcoming. And hopefully I'm gonna start looking at doing some work with those guys on producing some products, some clothing, using augmented reality as well, and start bringing that into play as well. So yeah, there's always loads going on. I think for me, I have to be careful that I don't overexpose myself in the nicest possible way, and I do what I enjoy doing, because then I get up and I want to do it. And as soon as people start annoying me and it all becomes too self-centered or too driven in the wrong way from a sensible perspective, I quietly step to the left and go on and do something else. So that's what I'm doing. As I say, LinkedIn is the place if you want to get hold of me. I'm very easy to find. Warren Parker Mills. Always happy to help. Shoot me a DM, and yeah, let's see where it all takes us. But I want to thank you as well, Nico, for finally us getting together and making this happen. It's been quite a while, right?
Well, my pleasure. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. I actually have a good connection to connect you on that neurodivergence project. One of the leaders that I'm building this chapter in LA with, he's teaching to autistic folks animation and other gaming technologies. So that's really cool. I have really good friends that are neurodivergent, and they either didn't know and they were suffering, and people around them were suffering because the lack of awareness is the biggest problem.
That is the challenge.
And there are many of them that are super talented. There's actually an episode, I don't know if you watched it, on 60 Minutes show, that I can send it to you or put it in the chat afterwards, that digs deeper into this problem, how neurodivergent folks are having difficulty with communication, and interviews are hard for them. So a lot of them are unemployed. So a lot of companies have, started taking actions and understanding that they have to adjust their process to onboard really talented people that just don't fit into the typical processes that we have. The norm.
No, you're absolutely right. And just on that, so my partner's son has a degree in gaming and animation, so he should be earning some serious money. But he also has his challenges, he has his challenges with saying the right things at the right time, and getting somebody where at the right time, and organizing himself and other things. Although he has strict passions that he follows to the nth degree, but he went for an interview, and one of the first questions was, "So why are you here?" And he went, "My mum told me to come." So I mean, it was exactly the right answer. He was being truthful. He didn't get the job, unfortunately. But this is the problem, Nico. There is so much talent out in the world, and actually, we need to be starting looking at ourselves and those people around us with a different filter now, a different lens, and we need to be looking at how we can lift, how we can develop. And thank goodness technology is here as it stands at the moment. And I keep going back to this point about custodianship and us being responsible, and let's not make those mistakes. Let's start turning the tide a little bit and being good folks, and just doing the right thing by the right people, and then hopefully we'll all be around and enjoying the rewards and spoils of it as we go.
Yeah, and the beauty is in diversity, and we have to be just open and welcoming, and magic happens when we are all working together. Thank you so much for all the amazing insights you shared with us. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. And thanks to our amazing audience, Alex, Ian, for lovely communication and engagement. Casey, he is inspired to go do something in his community.
Amazing.
That's so powerful. Alex, again, Gabriel, Ambriel, Ope, and everyone else, Nina, who contributed today. We are so grateful for you to be here. And Aditya, of course, we appreciate you so much. I encourage everyone to also tune in to our show next week, because we're bringing someone who is John Yu, who is actually democratizing AR technology solutions. We need more of tools that are a lower barrier to entry, so we
Hmm.
can have mass adoption, so we can have more impact. And then the following week we will have Hafid or Mexicano, who you probably know. He is amazing in consumer AI and AR and fashion. And so this month seems to be a lot of AR,
Great.
and getting to physical mixed with reality. Thank you so much, Warren, again. Thank you,
You're
everyone. Have a
welcome.
beautiful rest of the day, and we'll be in touch soon.
All
Thank
right.
you. Bye.
Ciao. Bye. Bye bye.